In 2018, Dwayne Johnson was secretly taking 47 pills a day, and his family had no idea. What started as legitimate treatment became a nightmare that nearly cost him everything he'd built. June 14, 2017. Vancouver, Canada. The skyscraper movie set. 6:23 a.m. Dwayne Johnson was preparing for what should have been a routine action sequence when his world tilted on its axis, literally. He was standing 40 feet above the ground on a green screen platform, about to film a scene where his character leaps between burning buildings, when a wave of excruciating pain shot through his lower back. The pain was so intense, so sudden, that his vision blurred and his knees buckled. "Cut!" the director yelled as Dwayne grabbed the safety harness, his face pale and contorted with agony. "Get the medic up there now." What happened next would lead to the darkest period of The Rock's life, a secret addiction that would consume him for the next 18 months and threaten to destroy everything he'd worked for. The on-set medic, Dr. Patricia Williams, examined Dwayne's back and immediately knew this wasn't just a minor strain. "You've got significant muscle spasms and what looks like a herniated disc," she told him. "You need real medical attention, not just a quick fix." But Dwayne had a $125 million movie riding on his shoulders. Literally. The entire production schedule, hundreds of jobs, and his reputation as Hollywood's most reliable action star all depended on him finishing this film. "Give me something for the pain," he said through gritted teeth. "Whatever it takes. I can't shut down production." Dr. Williams hesitated. She'd worked with enough action stars to know the dangerous path that request could lead down. But she also understood the pressure Dwayne was under. "I'm going to prescribe OxyContin for the severe pain," she said carefully. "But this is serious medication, Dwayne. It's only meant for short-term use while you heal. A few days, maybe a week maximum." Dwayne nodded, not really listening. All he cared about was getting back to work. And that's exactly what made him so vulnerable to what happened next. The OxyContin worked like magic. Within 30 minutes of taking his first pill, the pain that had been paralyzing him was reduced to a manageable ache. More importantly, he felt better. Not just physically but mentally. The constant pressure he carried, the weight of being responsible for everyone's livelihood, the stress of living up to his reputation, the exhaustion of maintaining his perfect image, all of it seemed lighter. For the first time in years, Dwayne Johnson felt like he could breathe. He finished the skyscraper shoot without missing another day. The herniated disc healed. The muscle spasms disappeared. But Dwayne kept taking the pills. Because here's what nobody understood about The Rock's addiction. It wasn't about chasing a high or escaping reality. It was about managing the impossible pressure of being Dwayne Johnson. When you're responsible for billion-dollar movie franchises, when hundreds of people's jobs depend on your performance, when millions of fans look to you for daily inspiration, when your family's security rests on your ability to stay at the top of an incredibly competitive industry, the weight of that responsibility can be crushing. The OxyContin didn't just numb physical pain. It numbed the anxiety, the pressure, the constant fear of letting everyone down. For someone who had never allowed himself to show weakness, never permitted himself to have an off day, these pills felt like a miracle. But miracles in pill form always come with a price. By October 2017, Dwayne's prescription had legitimately expanded. A stunt injury during Rampage filming led to more pills. Chronic shoulder pain from his wrestling days justified another prescription. Sleep issues from his brutal 4 a.m. workout schedule earned him sleeping medication. Suddenly, The Rock was managing multiple prescriptions from multiple doctors, all for legitimate medical reasons. And because he was rich, famous, and surrounded by people who depended on his success, nobody questioned whether he really needed all those medications. His daily routine became a carefully orchestrated dance of pills and timing. 2 OxyContin before his morning workout to manage chronic pain. 1 Adderall before meetings to maintain his legendary focus. Muscle relaxers after stunt work. Sleep aids at night because his mind wouldn't stop racing about tomorrow's responsibilities. And when those prescriptions ran low, it was surprisingly easy for someone with The Rock's resources to find doctors who were happy to help Hollywood's hardest-working star manage his pain. By January 2018, Dwayne was taking 47 pills a day. Breakfast, 3 OxyContin, 2 Adderall, 1 multivitamin to maintain the illusion of health. Pre-workout, for ibuprofen, 2 more OxyContin for chronic back pain. Lunch, 1 Adderall for afternoon energy. 3 prescription anti-inflammatories pre-stunt work. 2 muscle relaxers, 1 OxyContin dinner. 6 various supplements, his cover story. 3 more pain pills post-workout. 4 recovery supplements, 2 OxyContin bedtime. 2 sleeping pills, 1 anxiety medication, various other pills he'd convinced himself were necessary. The most terrifying part wasn't the number of pills, it was how functional he remained. The Rock's legendary discipline and work ethic actually masked his growing addiction. He still woke up at 4 a.m. He still crushed his workouts. He still showed up on time, prepared and professional for every commitment. From the outside, Dwayne Johnson looked exactly like the same motivated, unstoppable force he'd always been. But inside he was disappearing. The first person to notice something was wrong was his trainer, Dave Rienzi. Not because Dwayne's performance had declined, if anything, he was pushing himself harder than ever, as if trying to outrun something that was chasing him. Dave said after a particularly brutal workout session in February 2018, "You're training like a man possessed. What's going on?" Dwayne deflected with his usual charm and motivation speak. "Just staying ahead of the game, man. Can't let up when you're at the top." But Dave had been training elite athletes for 15 years. He recognized the signs of someone using performance enhancement not to get better, but to feel normal. The breaking point came on March 8, 2018, during what should have been a routine family dinner. Lauren had cooked Dwayne's favorite meal, and his daughters were excitedly telling him about their school day. It was exactly the kind of moment that The Rock lived for, quality time with the people who mattered most. But Dwayne couldn't focus. His mind was foggy from the pain pills, but also racing from the Adderall. He felt simultaneously exhausted and wired, present and completely disconnected. When his daughter asked him a simple question about her upcoming dance recital, he stared at her blankly for several seconds before realizing she had spoken. "Dad?" she said, concern creeping into her voice. "Are you okay? You look different." That's when Dwayne excused himself to the bathroom and stared at his reflection in the mirror. The man looking back at him was still physically imposing, still handsome, still recognizably The Rock. But his eyes were empty. Vacant. The spark that had driven him to the top of the entertainment world was gone, replaced by a pharmaceutical haze that was slowly stealing his soul. For the first time since this nightmare began, Dwayne admitted the truth to himself. He was addicted. But admitting the problem and solving it were two very different challenges. The next morning, Dwayne tried to quit cold turkey. He flushed all his pills down the toilet in a moment of desperate determination. He was The Rock after all. He'd overcome every other challenge through sheer willpower. This would be no different. 6 hours later, he was in withdrawal hell. His hands shook so violently he couldn't hold his coffee cup. Sweat poured down his face despite the air conditioning. His heart raced like he was sprinting even while sitting still. The anxiety was so intense it felt like his chest was being crushed. And the pain, the original back pain, plus every other ache and injury he'd been masking with pills, returned with a vengeance. By noon, Dwayne was on the phone with his doctor, claiming he'd accidentally dropped his pills in the sink and needed an emergency refill. That's when he realized he wasn't just fighting an addiction. He was fighting an entire system that had enabled and encouraged his dependency. Because here's the dirty secret about prescription drug addiction in Hollywood: it's not treated like addiction at all. It's treated like pain management and performance optimization. When you're generating hundreds of millions of dollars for studios, when thousands of jobs depend on your ability to show up and perform, the system has a vested interest in keeping you functional, even if that functionality is chemically induced. Dwayne's managers, agents, and publicists had no idea about the extent of his pill use, but they'd certainly noticed that he seemed more manageable lately. Less demanding about creative control, more willing to take on projects with impossible schedules, less likely to prioritize family time over work commitments. The entertainment industry, without even realizing it, was rewarding his addiction. But salvation came from an unexpected source. On April 15, 2018, Dwayne was having lunch with Kevin Hart while they discussed their upcoming Jumanji, The Next Level filming schedule. Kevin noticed that Dwayne seemed off, not sick exactly, but somehow diminished. "Man, you've been different lately," Kevin said with his usual directness. "Less you, if that makes sense." Instead of deflecting, something inside Dwayne broke open. Maybe it was because Kevin was one of the few people in his life who had no financial stake in his success. Maybe it was because he was desperate. Or maybe it was because he finally realized that keeping this secret was killing him faster than the addiction itself. "Kev," Dwayne said quietly, "I think I need help. Real help." The conversation that followed would save The Rock's life. Kevin didn't judge, didn't lecture, didn't threaten to expose Dwayne's secret. Instead, he shared something that shocked Dwayne to his core. Kevin had gone through his own struggle with prescription pills after his car accident in 2019, and he knew exactly how seductive and dangerous they could be. "The scariest part isn't that you're taking pills," Kevin told him. "It's that you're still functioning at such a high level. That's what makes it almost impossible to quit, because part of you believes you're actually performing better with them." Kevin introduced Dwayne to Dr. Michael Chin, an addiction specialist who worked exclusively with high performers, athletes, executives, entertainers, people whose addictions were complicated by their success and public image. "Mr. Johnson," Dr. Chin said during their first meeting, "you're not dealing with a typical addiction. You're dealing with what we call functional dependency syndrome. Your drugs are working exactly as intended. They're allowing you to meet impossible expectations and maintain an unsustainable pace. The challenge isn't just getting you off the pills. It's restructuring your entire life so you don't need them to function." The treatment program Dr. Chin designed for Dwayne was unlike anything he'd expected. Instead of traditional rehab, which would have been impossible given his public profile and work commitments, they created a gradual reduction plan that allowed him to maintain his career while slowly reclaiming his life. The first step was honesty. Dwayne had to tell his inner circle, Lauren, his mother, his manager, about his addiction. Those conversations were the hardest thing he'd ever done, harder than any workout or movie stunt. Lauren's reaction wasn't anger or disappointment. It was relief. "I knew something was wrong," she said, holding him as he cried for the first time in years. "I just didn't know what. I thought maybe you were getting tired of us, of this life. I never imagined you were in pain." The second step was medical supervision. Dr. Chin worked with Dwayne's doctors to create a medically safe reduction schedule. Instead of going from 47 pills a day to 0, they reduced his intake by 10% each week, replacing the pharmaceutical relief with alternative pain management, therapy, and lifestyle changes. The third step was the hardest: learning to be human again. 4 months, Dwayne had been operating like a highly efficient machine, powered by pills and driven by impossible standards. As the medication left his system, he had to relearn how to feel tired, how to experience normal anxiety, how to have bad days without seeing them as personal failures. "You've been running from your own humanity," Dr. Chin explained. "The pills didn't just manage pain, they managed all the messy, uncomfortable parts of being human. Now you need to learn that it's okay to have limits." The recovery process took 8 months. 8 months of gradually reducing his medication while learning healthier ways to manage stress, pain, and pressure. 8 months of therapy sessions where he confronted not just his addiction, but the perfectionism and people-pleasing that had made him vulnerable to it. The most surprising part of recovery wasn't how hard it was how much better his life became. As the pharmaceutical fog lifted from his mind, Dwayne rediscovered the creativity and passion that had driven his early success. His workouts became more effective because he was actually present for them. His relationships deepened because he was emotionally available. His performances improved because he was drawing from genuine emotion instead of chemically induced numbness. Most importantly, he learned the difference between sustainable excellence and unsustainable perfection. "I thought I needed those pills to be The Rock," he would later reflect. "Turns out they were preventing me from being Dwayne Johnson. And Dwayne Johnson is who The Rock really needed to be." The final test came in December 2018, during the filming of Fast Furious Presents Hobbs Shaw. This was the most physically demanding role of his career, with stunts that would have been challenging even at his peak. His old self would have immediately reached for pain medication to power through. Instead, Dwayne worked with his stunt coordinators to design sequences that were spectacular but safe. He listened to his body when it needed rest. He used ice baths, massage therapy, and proper nutrition for recovery instead of pills. And he delivered the best action performance of his career. The movie was a massive success, but more importantly, Dwayne had proven to himself that he could excel without pharmaceutical assistance. He was still The Rock, but now he was a version of The Rock that was sustainable, authentic, and genuinely happy. Today, Dwayne Johnson is completely clean from prescription drug addiction. He still experiences pain from his wrestling injuries and movie stunts, but he manages it through physical therapy, proper rest, and acceptance that some discomfort is just part of life. More importantly, he's become an advocate for others struggling with prescription drug dependency. Not through public announcements or awareness campaigns, his addiction remains a private matter, but through quiet support for friends and colleagues who find themselves in similar situations. "The hardest addictions to recognize are the ones that make you more successful," he often tells people who confide in him about their struggles. When drugs are improving your performance instead of destroying it, it's almost impossible to see them as a problem. But there's a difference between being enhanced and being enslaved. The Rock's secret addiction taught him that true strength isn't about never needing help, it's about recognizing when you need help and having the courage to ask for it. It taught him that sustainable success requires taking care of the person behind the persona. Most importantly, it taught him that his value didn't depend on being superhuman. That the world didn't need him to be perfect, it needed him to be real. The man who had spent his career inspiring others to be their best had to learn the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes being your best means admitting you're not okay, and that's perfectly human. In an industry that often rewards self-destruction disguised as dedication, Dwayne Johnson chose recovery over reputation. He chose health over the illusion of invincibility. He chose to be a human being instead of a human doing. And in the end, that choice didn't diminish his success, it made it meaningful. The Rock's secret addiction almost destroyed him. But his recovery saved not just his career but his soul. And that's a victory worth more than any box office record or business deal. Because the strongest thing The Rock ever did wasn't lifting weights or performing stunts. It was admitting he needed help and then doing the hard work of getting it.